Usually we see two different location approaches when creating headshots for a client, in the photography studio or on the client's premises. But a few weeks ago, when I was scrolling through Rafael's Instagram account, I explored some posts that really catch my attention. Images shot I would never have believed or guessed way there were done. So today we also talk about the third option, the absolutely unusual locations for your headshots photography. They are truly surprising, at least for me. Welcome, Rafael. Great having you here, and thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to chat with you. We've been talking for quite a bit over the last several months. So yeah, thank you for the invitation. And I'm super excited to, discuss some of this stuff about the way I work with my clients, how I shoot my headshots. I'm looking forward to these conversations for sure.
Great. Before we jump in, let me just quickly explain for our viewers that I have created a showcase with 4 sections. So the 2 first sections are about really the locations. Then one is about posing on location and one is about lighting on location. But before we jump in, you stated in one of the quotes in one of your posts on Instagram, creativity is inventing, experimenting, growing, taking risks, breaking rules, making mistakes, and having fun. This is a quote by Mary Lou Cook, an actress, by the way. But I mean, there's some reason you picked this quote. Is this a guiding principle of yours?
Um, you know what? Like, there's so much to unpack here because I think it's a kind of process when it comes to, like creating your art. It's starting like everybody else. We start with equipment, then we try to somehow develop the style, and we're going through so many different obstacles, challenges, and we try to make things work. And I know in this DNA, we try to learn things quickly, but unfortunately, I found that things takes time, and then we have to be patient, not only with ourselves, but with the process itself. And there was no difference when it comes to my career. Like, I don't know, people who are following my work, I started as a wedding photographer for about 10 years. So I, try to learn this kind of genre of photography. And then I started slowly kind of changing into something different because weddings were really burning me out. And I was just like, okay, I have to stop this at some point. I still want to stay in photography and I still want to stay in that industry. And I started slowly shooting headshots because I fall in love with them. I found that there's completely different connection with the client. There's different way of shooting. And at the beginning, I was thinking, hey, I have 10 years of experience. Headshots going to be easy breezy, till I started actually shooting them. And I was just kind of overwhelmed, like how much more I have to learn, how much I have to understand about lighting, about posing, about off camera lighting, because weddings, most of the time I was shooting pretty much natural light, and going from natural light to speed lights and then all this lighting setups was extremely confusing. And I think what is the biggest problem sometimes is we have access to so much knowledge these days, and we can kind of get it for free. It's we don't have to really kind of go to school. We can basically go on YouTube. But at the same time, even though the principles, how things work, you see all the setups, but then this whole process again is much more complex. It's not just putting the lights here and there, take a shot and you're done. There's much more to it, and I will be happy to kind of dive really deep into this, and we can kind of discuss how this whole thing kind of unfold.
But going back to creativity and challenge, that was kind of your step of evolvement from your wedding photography towards headshot or to this genre or style. Obviously, wedding photography needs the same, so creativity. Is this your guiding principle? So was this really stepping up towards, you live by that in headshot photography?
Yes, I 100% agree that there was like what I was trying to say is each genre of photography needs different type of creativity, because when you shoot weddings you think differently. When you shoot headshots, you also have to look and think differently just to make things work. So I don't think we can compare those two things, that this whole thing kind of you can apply from one genre to another. There's definitely some principles when it comes to the lighting, and you have to understand how this whole thing works. But again, you approach weddings differently, and you approach headshots completely different way. But again, it's always challenge, right? And there's always obstacles. But I think that people take a lot of challenges different way. I think we're getting frustrated and we're getting kind of upset. We're getting angry. There's so many negative emotions associated with challenges. But what I've learned over the time, I was always trying to kind of talk to myself and say, hey, there's a solution for this, because if someone else was able to kind of overcome this, you will be able to do that as well. And that kind of makes you research more and practice more and try new things, and eventually you will get the results. It's, again, as I said a few minutes ago, it just takes time, and sometimes we just don't have a patience for that. But it's like everything else. I don't really believe in talent. A lot of people saying, oh, you're so talented. Like, I don't think this is true. It's just a little bit of talent and so much work, and you have to just kind of keep pushing, keep trying. It's like climbing the mountain, right? It's just a slow step, incremental steps, and then eventually you will get to the top.
So it's work and consistency, right?
Absolutely.
So let me switch quickly to the presentation. So let me start from my side with the most surprising locations that I was never expecting, just seeing the results. Okay, let us take this in for a moment.
Okay.
This could have been done everywhere, right?
Yes.
So now let's see where this was done. This is this is astonishing. Please explain us what you were shooting here and what's actually going on, and why for the good part is this in this kind of outdoor setting. Please tell us what's going on here.
So before I jump into kind of explaining this photo shoot, and that was actually shot on the bridge. This is like one of the most famous bridges in Calgary. It's fairly new. This bridge won many awards for the architecture. It's kind of popular place. So
okay, but if we go back to the result here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who cares?
Yes, but I'll explain this step by step. So before we jump into this whole thing, I just want to say that I never own a studio. So for me, basically shooting everywhere was the only option, and I didn't have too much choices, because, as I said, like, if you have a studio, then you can play with different stuff. You can play with different lighting. You can create things kind of specific way. But for me, when I kind of turn into headshots, my goal was to pretty much pick locations and try to shoot there. So that was one of those things which kind of get me kind of my creative juices going, because I was always on the lookout for some places where I can do my headshots. And before we actually also like jump into the specifics of this image, so this shot was taken for there's campaign which I ran with my wife several years ago, and we were pretty much photographing people from Calgary who they achieved some amazing things in their careers. And this actually particular gentleman, he's a really well-known musician, and he's a singer. He's really popular in Canada. He wrote some amazing songs. You can hear him on the radio all the time. So when we shot this, we talk a little bit about where we want to do the shoot, and we want to pick up the place which is going to be associated with our city. So that's why we picked the bridge, because the bridge is really popular. It's one of those kind of landmark of Calgary. So when people see it, they know exactly where that is. And that was partially the reason why we choose this location. Was not just I could get the shoot anywhere. It was more to give a little bit of more meaning for him, for the image, and just connect some stuff which would kind of showcase who he is, where he lives, where he actually career is unfolds, where he started. There's a lot of kind of
Of
story
course,
behind, right?
of
But that's
course,
why we
but
choose
that's
this place. Yeah.
exactly, but that's perfect. For me, a really outsider from Europe, looking at
Mm-hmm.
this particular picture, unfortunately, not knowing the gentleman needed a bridge. So it's great to hear about the concept. So it seems to be the gentleman is countrywide known, the bridge is
Mm-hmm.
known, it makes the context, and that's just perfect. That's the
Mm-hmm.
perfect explanation. But seeing the post or this kind of situation on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram in your portfolio, I was thinking like, okay, why in a way of doing it here besides of a cool background, and we will talk about backgrounds in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So that's the concept. So
Sure.
let's go to the second one. Where's the key? Here's the key. So this gentleman, kind of the
Mm-hmm.
same situation. Let us sink this in for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the
That's
behind
the
the
that's
scenes.
the behind the scenes. Yes.
Right. Again, what's the little story, the short story
Okay.
about it?
So so the story behind this gentleman, yeah, like I wouldn't want to go to the specifics,
Sure.
but he's a kind of person who has some rough moment in his life, and he asked me, he says, hey, you know what, I'm kind of the really rough spot. I'm trying to do some modeling and some acting, and then I need some headshots, which could kind of like showcase who I am. And I always look for places, where there's a color, there is some texture, there is some patterns. And the funny thing is about this is the fact that Calgary is kind of place where you really can't find graffiti. Like it's just really difficult because they disappear the next day whenever they appear. And the local government has, I would say, company, or they have some kind of like I don't know, system put in place that if there is any graffiti around the city, they clean up right away. There's a company coming in and they're just going to paint over the whole thing within minutes. So seeing something like this, I was just like amazed, because it was kind of cool location, and the graffiti itself had this kind of really cool colors and patterns and stuff like that. So I said, hey, you know what? I look at this place. I found it recently. I hope it's gonna be still there. Why don't we go and we're gonna shoot there? And he's like, sure. Like I don't mind. We can go anywhere. So that's why we choose this location. But most of the reason I've decided to do that, I really like the colors. I really like the pattern. And when I saw it, I was just like, okay, you know what? I need to shoot there because it's gonna create something interesting. And yeah, and then we basically went there, set up my typical lighting, and we did the photo shoot. So I was always jealous for some cities where they like literally flood it with graffitis, because it's also kind of piece of art, right? And then you connecting like your art with someone else's art. I always found this kind of fascinating. And actually the place who we are, the place which was connected to that wall was a restaurant, and they also wanted some photos of this graffiti, because like, you know what, the city of Calgary is going to clean it up really quickly. So if we could just take a couple shots so we can have it as a kind of memory, it would be nice. So yeah, so that was the whole kind of concept behind it. So
That's such a beautiful insight. That's so many things we don't get as viewers, obviously, because really we're very neutral. We just see the final and then apparently the behind the scenes.
yeah,
So, but that was really actually a very private headshot client shoot. So that's the whole concept behind that, right? And that's
absolutely.
yeah, but that's
Yeah, so the
beautiful.
yes, thank you. There's another like a little reason I've decided to do that, because I've been hearing from so many photographers, like this is one of those things which you just hear all the time. Oh, I don't have a place to shoot. Like I don't have like nice backgrounds. I don't have some interesting places in our city. I'm like, you just have to look around. There's so many places in every city, and you just have to look for them and then use them. The thing is that you definitely you wouldn't take some I don't know, some CEO or some kind of corporate person to some kind of backyard and, just do this type of shoot. So also you have to, figure it out, what the location is good for, and then, who can be good fit for this particular place. But that's also like one little thing what I want to add to this is that this whole kind of like way, like the way I look for locations came from my wedding kind of experience, because we always try to create something different for each client. And then when you shoot in the same location, I was always on the lookout for places, because I didn't want to shoot all my clients in the same place. And some of those popular places, when it comes to weddings, they're always packed with people. And that's why I was always kind of even driving around a city and going to some, behind some avenues and some, dirt roads, and then look for places which could be interesting for my wedding photography. And I definitely discussed this with my clients prior, like, oh, I have this location, and usually I have some snapshots, of the place. And, I was always asking like, hey, would you guys be interested to go to that place so we can take some wedding photos? And again, depends on the client, depends, what they were looking for. I could always have some unique places, and I knew whenever I'm gonna go there will be nobody else. And that's kind of, the same scenario when it comes to the headshots. I was always trying to find some new places where I could take some interesting pictures and have some interesting backgrounds.
That's really fantastic. Okay, let's explore a few unusual shooting situations, which are also connected to rather unusual locations, but the combination is quite striking. Please, again, so first we have here this beautiful result, this beautiful lady. Everything is in yellow. Oh, it actually fits kind of the ISO1200.
There you go.
Guys, yeah, like your shirt. Okay, thanks for choosing your shirt today. I've
Of course.
not really noticed that. So we have this result, but what is really, really, really freaking striking is the shooting situation. Of course, it's the location, but also the situation. It seems to be a public pool, swimming pool, something like that. Why? What did you do there?
Okay, so again, this is a little bit of story behind it.
Of course.
Behind this image. So this lady, she that was shot several years ago, and she actually won Miss Canada. And she approached me and she's like, "Hey, I want to get some images, some headshots. Would you be okay to, kind of organize a shoot?" I'm like, "Sure, no problem." And so, as you probably know, I live in Calgary, where 8 months of the year we have pretty insane winter, and the temperatures drops usually to like -30, -40 degrees. So like there's no way I can shoot outside. So usually I'm trying to find locations where it's indoor, so I can pretty much, shoot there and then, kind of create those images. And in this particular case, I was telling a little bit about this a program or like project I was doing, where we were just picking up some, the most known people in Calgary. We're creating portraits, and then we pretty much creating kind of like a charity campaign around it. And that year, we had this big event at that location. It's a hotel. It's a boutique hotel in Calgary, and has insane interior. Like they have some pretty amazing stuff inside. And yeah, I just pretty much contact the owner, because I actually had access to the person who was owning the place. And I asked them straight ahead. I'm like, "Hey, I have this lady. She's Miss Canada, and I was wondering if I could shoot in your hotel." And they said, "Of course, just come in, let us know when, and we will set it up." So we had few locations. So they have beautiful lobby. If I could show you kind of different images, because we were trying to do different stuff. And actually, we were shooting at the pool, because pool was connected to the lobby, and they have all these cool lights behind it. So yeah, I set it up everything on the pool deck, and yeah, we shot there. So I think one of those things what I want to share with that is the fact that to be honest, I was shooting literally everywhere, like place. You just put me in the place and I will make it work. Right. And again, this is what I was saying at the beginning, because I don't have a studio. I was trying to make any location work. And that was one
Absolutely.
of them. Yeah.
And that's fantastic. That's why we're talking about this today, right? So, and that was my thought. You don't have a studio. That's why, obviously, you choose this kind of locations. I just think you should make your mm, marketing or promotion better. So, I I know Instagram is sometimes a bit limited in these carousel posts, and I got
Yes.
these photos from the carousel posts, obviously. But the thing is, I didn't know the gentleman from the very first photo. At least you could have shout out. So this is, the very famous singer from Calgary or Canada. So now we're talking about the Miss Canada or
Mm-hmm.
ex Miss Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Never saw this caption.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a hint.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I shot a lot of well-known
Right,
people in the city.
right.
And we always work in some really, well, not strange, but kind of
Yeah, but that's
locations.
fantastic. But I didn't get that when researching this kind of post or this interview.
Mm-hmm.
So I really didn't get actually the celeb status
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. I know that's sometimes not really important,
Yeah.
but it helps in promotion, right?
Yes, absolutely. But you know what? Again, this is also, I'm not trying, and this is, I don't know, because I would say a little bit humble, and I'm not trying to promote myself throughout, because I shot, this and that person, and just
Of
kind of
course,
like, yeah. And then like, I know a lot of photographers out there kind of like push this, because I know it just brings them more, I don't know,
business.
credibility and business and stuff like that. But like, for me, at the end of the day, the most important thing is the image. As long as the client is happy, right, and as long as I'm happy with the images, that's what I care about. But just kind of like putting all those medals around myself that I shot with that person, I don't really do that. But
Absolutely, and I get that, and I'm kind of similar way. And
yeah.
it's not that suggestion that you should do that, but what is really striking for me is beside the locations is every image or every result we see here we're talking about now has a story and
Yes.
has a personal story to it, and this gives additional dimension most likely is missed if we just see the photo. So that's why I was suggesting kind of the
Yes. Oh,
relation to what it
absolutely.
was and how it is.
I know
I
I
really
should
get
do
it.
that. There's no question about it. It's sometimes like I'm just getting this, okay, how people gonna take it, right? And how people gonna look at it. And
Don't care about it.
I know, I know.
Next one.
Okay.
Beautiful photo. Really striking. Really, a lot of energy. What the heck is going on with the child on this photo?
So this also has a quite interesting story.
Of
And
course.
it's a long one. I'll try to keep
Let's
it
try to
short.
make it short. Yes.
Yes. So this lady, she is a yoga instructor, and she helped my wife big time with when she was pregnant with my son. She literally throughout 9 months guided her through all this stuff that helped her to kind of get to the finish line the best way possible. And she directed us to like a pregnancy schools. She gave us some amazing tips. She gave us some amazing books. She really helped us with my wife's pregnancy. To the last day, she was just like in touch with us, and she was helping. And of course, at some point, she's like, you know what, I need a headshot for my business. And I said, sure, I'll come in. And she's got 3 kids, and 2 of them I think went to school, and she got the little one, um, throughout a photo shoot. And then she's like, are you okay with this? I'm like, of course, we will have to make this work. So the kid, as soon as we start shooting, she started crying, right? And I'm just like, she was trying to kind of calm her down and whatever, but she was just going kind of bunkers. She was not happy that we were shooting. And at some point she's like, you know what, like, screw it, let's do this. I'm gonna smile, she can cry. And I just snapped this photo. I was just like, because she was just posing and smiling and trying to kind of make this work. And this baby was just like literally glued to her leg, and losing her mind. So I just kind of, zoom out a little bit, and I took a shot, and it was kind of interesting because whenever I post that image on my Facebook group, or post anywhere, people were absolutely crazy about that image, right? I think it was even more popular than the headshot itself, because I think a lot of people can relate to this, right? We're going to these photo shoots, people try to make this work, and there's so much things going on around, and then most of the times we really don't see that. So
feeling and seeing and listening to your approach of headshot photography, which has always a kind of a very personal component to it. It seems to be so different from other photographers that are shooting more corporate industrial style stuff. I'm certain you're doing this too, and that's not what we want to talk about this today, but it was really about these unusual locations, and now we get these insights and personal stories, which is absolutely fantastic. So
so if
yes, please.
if I might, there's one little thing to it, which I'm sure if you see the behind the scene photo, we were shooting in the kitchen. So that's her kitchen. So you can see the table. There is some
Right.
stove behind it.
Right.
So
I didn't know that's her kitchen. I just
yeah, that's
knew
her
it
kitchen.
could be in a bar or in a restaurant or
No,
whatever. Right. Okay.
that was her kitchen, right? So
Okay.
that was another little kind of funny thing, that we're shooting the business headshot for her business, like with her baby, and in the kitchen, because all the other places, I couldn't make it work.
Cool. Okay,
Absolutely.
let's go to the next, a bit more traditional ones, at least from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
For my classification, these are environmental headshots, right? But surprising
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's kind of, we do not really recognize the environment. So
Mm-hmm.
I will reveal the behind the scenes in a second, but why did you shoot there at all? So that's
Mm-hmm.
the result, and that's actually where it was shot. Of course, the picture number 5. So the lady is a chef, I
Mm-hmm.
assume, and then the number 6, I don't know, could be a barkeeper because we have it in a bar or in a restaurant. But um, it's obviously not exactly about, well, within their environment. So what's the
Mm-hmm.
story, or what's the concepts for this kind of shoots?
So there's also like a little stories to those images. Again, we'll try to keep it short. So when it comes to the headshots, like my main focus is the person itself, right? And because you don't really see, it's not like a typical, I would say, environmental image where you're just shooting there in the location where they kind of like, I don't know, this, there's the business or the career or whatever they do. So when you see the headshot, you really don't kind of, as I said, you cannot really recognize where it was shot. But people who hire me to do the work, they know, it's not about the environment, it's about them, right? So that's why those images look the way they look. Although I think these people kind of know where it was shot. So that's a little bit of story which is hidden, and it's just for them. So the first image, on the top, the lady in the kitchen. So this is another really interesting story. She's a chef for one of the most wealthiest people in Calgary. And, the guy, like, I don't know how much he's worth, but probably like billions and billions of dollars. And he's got this building in Calgary where he, well, basically run his, companies. He also has a private or personal chef who basically cooks for him and his team. And she contacted me, and she's like, you know what, I need a headshot, and then would you be okay coming in here and shoot at this location? So we did, again, bunch of different locations, but the funny thing is, like, the kitchen was fairly well. If you see there, she's sitting on the table, and there's some kind of kitchen stuff. The kitchen wasn't as big, and this table was so heavy we couldn't move this table. So I was just like, you know what, we'll try to make this work. So in that case, I was like, okay, I'm gonna use the windows as a background. We're gonna blur it, and we're gonna make this work. So that was the first shoot. The second one also is kind of interesting because this person. So again, this is another really kind of interesting story. The guy, he owns a brewery, like a private brewery in Calgary. And the things which you see on the background, there's like a big tanks where they just, I don't know, they do this whole process creating the beer. And again, they have this little place there where, you know, people do the tasting. Yeah, so I was like, you know what, it's reflective, it's kind of cool. So we use that as a background. The one little thing which I want to mention here, this guy at that time, he was extremely sick. He had cancer. The doctors, they said, I think they you know, they didn't give him too much chances to kind of, you know, go through this. And yeah, we did this photo shoot. But the funny thing is, you know, I see the behind the scene, the photo. He's super excited and he was super positive, you know, despite his illness and how sick he was. We did this photo shoot. We got the image, and he wanted to have this at his place, you know. And again, it's a hidden story. So those images, you know, if you wouldn't see, as you said, the background, you probably wouldn't know. But there's, as I said, I always say, you know, we have something there which people don't know what it is. It's just only for the person who, you know, I'm taking the pictures of. They know the full story of this.
Right. Your results look and appear and feel similar, which has to do
Yes.
with consistency, with posing, with lighting. We will talk in a bit about that, obviously, and that's what is really most important about it. But each situation or each single photo, as far we have seen it, has always a really personal note and story to it. So is this the way you want to conduct your
Yes.
business? Okay.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. You know, and that's, I think, what struck me with headshots. I think that was one of those things which really pulled me into this industry. That, you know, when I was shooting weddings, you were dealing with hundreds of people, right? You were going to the wedding, and then you like, there's no, I would say, emotional connection with with you know, the clients. You know, like, I had connection with the bride and groom, but there was chaos always, right? There was always chaos. There was always running around. There was always, you know, trying to make things work. And headshots were completely on the opposite side, because you had to connect it with people, right? You had to kind of know them a little bit more. You had to find, you know, kind of locations which would fit what they, you know, even again, this is, I'm just repeating myself, you know, even though it's all about them, but you giving them something more, just the headshots. I had this story again, where I was shooting a guy who he came, well, he was Muslim, right? And we used this projector idea where I projected one of those mosques where he, you know, I don't know, grew up, and had so much meaning to him. And he started crying, like literally crying on the photo shoot, because, you know, you couldn't see. It was funny because you couldn't see the mosque on the background. He knew it was there, and he knew, you know, it's hidden, and this is part of this image. But he says, like, you know, that's the best image I've got, because I only know the story behind it. This is just for me. This is personal thing where, you know, a lot of people don't understand. And I also just give them a little bit of also kind of ability to share about an image, right? Oh, he used this background for, you know, this shoot. You don't know what it is, but I can tell you. And there's this story, right? I had another story where, you know, like, we took a photo. This is also crazy. Actually, the guy just passed away this last year. So we actually doing a photo shoot. We're doing his headshot, and he got a phone call on the photo shoot that his daughter give the birth to his grandchild, and we used a picture of her as a background. So you can't see that it's her, but it's there. And, you know, that was just a kind of like the moment for him where, you know, like, he got this phone call. You know, he found out about this baby which was just born seconds ago, and we used that picture of his daughter for the background. And he's like, oh man, this picture has so much meaning for me, because he not only remember, you know, the moment of what happened at that time, but also had an image which has this hidden message, you know, kind of behind, and was kind of, I don't know, meaningful for him. So yeah, I could just go on and on, like, because every image you pull out has some story. Like, maybe
Right.
sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, but definitely, you know, going back to your question, I'm trying to make those photo shoots meaningful for these people. I'm trying to connect them. I'm trying to understand them, trying to know them a little bit more, and there's something associated with this, right?
Okay, so it's really beautiful, but you're most definitely not the regular headshot
Headshot.
photography guy,
Yeah,
right?
you know what? I hope so, but I think all those headshot photographers, they also could say a little bit story about some of those images. You know,
Right.
there's some good experiences. I also could share some bad ones, right? I had some
Of
headshots
course.
where it was horrible.
Right. But let's
But again,
talk about the good ones
yeah,
today.
yeah, absolutely. But that's what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is, every headshot session, I think for most headshot photographers, they could add a little bit of story here and there. There's no question about it.
Of course, what you're describing with headshots is the genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you're in, my point of view, what you're describing with the stories that led to the situation, to the location, to the
Mm-hmm.
the setup. Actually, it's kind of a portrait photography.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. You know, headshots are kind of like part of portrait, kind of the group, right? It's just a
Of
little bit of
course.
different version of
Because
portrait.
but the headshots, technically speaking, we see or we convey headshots as something that's corporate and a bit, grayish
Yes.
background. But the things you're doing, I mean, specifically, I know it's marketing. You
Mm-hmm.
market them as headshots, but a kind of the whole situation, the whole package around. Actually, it's kind of portraiture, right?
It is. And again, you know what? This is just what hit me right now. Maybe this whole thing also is kind of the leftovers from my wedding career, right? Because when it comes to weddings, they always tell you, oh, you have to create the wedding story. You know, the way you shoot, you have to
Right.
create a story. And with that, they always say, oh, every picture, supposed to should have some kind of story behind it. And maybe that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to create a little bit of story with my headshots. Even this is just a headshot, and it's just simple. I would say pretty simple and pretty straightforward image. But what I was trying to do over the years, I was trying to implement some story with those images, and that was the only way I could find to make this work.
Okay, we talked about so many actually private, insightful stories. Now, let's go back on a bit on the educational part. Let's talk about posing. I know posing is not really related to the location, but since I have discovered the posts or
Mm-hmm.
the behind the scenes that was about location, seeing the posing that's related to it, I was quite surprised. So, independent on which location you shoot, it really seems that you have two kind of refined go-to strategies about posing. But
Mm-hmm.
before we talk about this, it appears that those private clients headshots you have, are they mostly shot in their private homes and places? So when talking
Yes,
about location, okay,
absolutely.
okay. So they don't have any assistance for letting you into their homes or places.
Yeah, we can. You know what? Let's discuss this, because that's something which I think is extremely interesting.
Mm,
And I think that's going to give people a little bit, or I would say, different perspective on why even I'm shooting at the client's locations, and why I don't have a studio. Because I guess for a lot of photographers out there, is the kind of the dream come true, like, oh, I have in my own studio.
right.
And so there's two little things which I want to point it out. First, whenever you shoot in a variety of different locations, and you just don't know what to expect, you're just going to place, and like, you have to make this work. And that's really pushes your kind of creativity. That's, you really have to see things differently. You really have to make things work. The more you shoot in awkward locations and tough locations and tight and spacious, and like things which you have to somehow figure something out to make this work. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons for me, that and I would have to say I'm really appreciated I went through that path, because that really helped me to understand lighting better, to be more creative, to do things where I could just make any location work. So that was the first thing. The second thing, when it comes to shooting at clients' location, I found that I had some corporate photo shoots where I was renting out a studio. So I rent out the place, and the clients were coming in and we were shooting. And I found, especially for headshots, which also I think they're very personal, and people have to open up to you, they have to somehow kind of connect with you. Most of their studios, they're big, they have lots of equipment, they have lots of lighting, and they spacious, so people feel like they going on this freaking, sorry for my language, kind of soccer field, and everything is point out at them, and they have to smile or they have to do all this stuff. It's very intimidating for them. And I remember so many sessions I had that like the thing didn't work. Like I could see their stress, they terrified, they you could see through their eyes, they like, this is not their environment. And of course it takes a little bit of time, you can warm them up and you can get what you want, but was just really intimidating experience for them, right? Especially for people who never have done this before. It was terrifying, right? So when I started shooting at their locations, I found like, okay, you know what? They feel better because it's their environment, it's their home. They feel safe. They really kind of, they're in their own place where, they pretty much have completely different way of, like thinking. And like I could see right away the results are different, right? Not to mention they had access to their clothing, they had access to kind of their own, I would say, some kind of props or things they feel comfortable with, right? Like it's all about a comfort. And that's why I actually, I've realized this fairly quickly, and I'm just, what, it works. And then whenever I was explaining to them, you can come into the studio or you can come to my place, and we can shoot here, but we also can go to the studio. But I can tell you right away, if we're gonna be shooting at your place, you're gonna feel way better. So people usually like, oh, you can shoot here, that's awesome, you're just coming in, right? And also, like, I'm shooting right now a lot of my sessions at my home, and the same thing, like I'm trying to make this look like a freaking home. I'm not making it look this like a studio, right?
Okay.
So this all about, I think different types of, like, if we're talking about some corporate stuff where, you're
Right.
working with some high-end models, or you're working with people who've done it a million times, for them it's another place, another studio. But for folks who, it's something that it's new, you have to figure out a place where their comfort gonna affect your pictures,
Okay.
right? So
Okay.
that's one of the reasons I was
Okay.
pushing this
But
really hard.
that's absolutely a fantastic insight, because I mean, there are like two point of views, right? So there's the industry point of view from the photographer's view, and it always looks like, okay, you're not professional if you do not have a studio, fixed environment
Right.
with everything, which is kind of an accurate point of view. But at the very end of the day, you're conducting business, and the business is all about your client, right? And
Yes.
and if it's about the client, and it's actually a fantastic strategy for the client, that he or she feels more comfortable in their own location, even if this either is his home or can be the office, doesn't matter. That's the actual way to go. I mean, I've never looked at it this way, because for me as a portrait photographer, I had my portrait studio. But again, looking at all your stories and all the personal insights, it makes it so obvious that it connects and works better if you're in the place where the person would like to be, than the opposite going into a studio. And it's not a weakness as a photographer, right? It's actually a strength.
Absolutely. And then again, at the end of the day, you're looking at the comfort of your client, right?
Right.
So that's what it's, I think, the key point of
Right.
doing this. But everyone has own approach, right? So I know there's some studios where they do fantastic job, and it's much more convenient for the client, for the photographer, to have on place, and people just coming in and coming out. So for photographer, it's definitely challenge whenever they have to go to the location, right? But again, for me, from coming from the wedding industry, wasn't big of a deal because, with weddings, I was just running all over the place, right? Going
Right.
to clients'
Right.
locations and then running to different places. So that's not big of a deal, even though the city of Calgary is fairly big. So driving around also takes a lot of time and, takes, kind of sometimes more that we should, there's no public transportation in which, you could take. You always have to have a car, not to mention. But I want to mention one person, actually, a friend of mine. He took the same approach. He's a headshot photographer in New York, and the funny thing is he used the subway to just go to the locations with his gear and then set it up quickly, take a shots, and move on to the next place. So there's other photographers who do that, and they know why they do that, right? So that's something
Right. Right.
If you are in this industry for quite a bit, you kind of have a little bit of better understanding how the psychology works for your clients.
Right. Okay, so let's jump back into posing.
Okay.
From the convenience from the location for the clients to the convenience about posing, right? Because I discovered a few kind of funny things. Okay. So okay, wrong button. This one here. We were talking about posing, even if there are private clients or corporate clients. So, but it seems to be at their places. So what I have seen, the first go-to pose setup for you is a lot of your clients are captured being seated for a session. So what we see here. Why?
So there's a couple of reasons. So before we jump into actual posing, I want to just say a couple of things. So we're going to just give all the secrets. So first of all, I found that you have to make person engage with you. So if you, let's say, put person in the front of the camera and you just tell them, hey, stand up and look at me, usually what happens, they're going to get really uncomfortable and they're going to be start kind of like, pushing their arms forward. They're going to be stressed. You can see, they're stressed through their body language. So I found that whenever they're sitting, they're a little bit more comfortable, right? We can do exactly the same things with them when they're sitting while they're standing. So I found sitting always kind of gives the client, again, a little bit more comfort. So sometimes I mix it up, if I see that the client kind of, don't feel comfortable or, they cannot really clear their mind, I kind of pushing back and forth, sitting, standing, whatever. But most of the time I'm trying to make them sit because I found that it's going to be way more comfortable, especially when we're shooting headshots. You don't see the legs. You don't really see, what is happening, lower down there. You just see, the top. So that's why, it doesn't really kind of matter if they're sitting or standing. The next thing is I always ask my clients to, push their body forward, right? Because I want to make them engage with the camera. Because if they're sitting straight and they just look at you, their mind kind of is going away. So whenever they have to lean forward towards the camera and, they're sitting on the edge of the chair, like, I'm not saying it makes them uncomfortable, but makes them focus on what they're doing. And that actually creates the attention, and they have to think about their body. They have to think about what they're doing. And that's going to make them focus a little bit more on you and on the camera. So that's the kind of little, I don't want to say secret, but little thing, which, I've learned over the years, that the engagement with you is extremely important, and you have to somehow create this environment and this kind of posing that's gonna somehow push this a little bit. So that's the reason when it comes to the sitting and pushing their body forward.
Okay, but now, okay, I perfectly understand. So it's from the convenience to engaging to interacting, right? But
absolutely.
let's take it up a notch, because what was really interesting, what I have seen, obviously it was the behind the scenes of a model. So this was a model shoot. So this is not a client. But again, super interesting seeing the result on the left side and then behind the scenes. And now, but what this is all about is about her posture, positioning, posing on the right side, so on the behind the scenes. So it seems in general that this is your second go-to pose setup, in a way of standing and leaning forward. We will see in a minute in the client shoots what this actually means. And for a model, this looks quite, that's the job description, right? Let's see a few of the results here. So these are 4 results, which appear like the other ones we have seen. So we don't know what's behind that, right? But actually seeing on how they are posing, and you told me these are actual clients, because first of all, I thought was kind of a workshop. So, how to teach people how to pose and how to shoot and stuff like that. It looks like you're really encouraging your actual clients to do kind of such acrobatic challenges too. I've never seen this with any other photographer. So they use rather traditional posing, like we already talked about the sitting poses with tricks and shoulders. How do your clients respond to this kind of request? Isn't this too much trouble for this kind of poses?
Most of the clients, they listen, right? Because they want to look good and they just want to make the shot works, right? So they kind of trust my kind of expertise on, what they should do. This whole thing is not as challenging as, I think most people would think. So the reason behind this, so let me kind of explain this, why they do what they do. So first of all, when they sit on the edge of the chair, they can really easy push their body forward, right? So that's kind of easy go. When they're standing, it's a little bit of a different story, because if you're standing, you have your feet right beside each other and you lean forward, like you're going to just fall forward, right? Like it's just uncomfortable. So what they do, they pretty much, split up their legs and they put the whole weight of their body on their front leg, which means that, it's much easier for them to push their body forward, right? So there's another thing what it does. So when they lean forward and they push their body forward, they also extend their neckline. So the neck looks much, much longer. So if someone has double chin or, it's a little bit, I would say, overweight, and they stay straight forward, the double chin just comes out. But when they lean forward, automatically this whole thing is hidden, right? And you really don't see that. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason, which I want to discuss, and we talk a little bit about it, whenever they have to do a little bit of different things, makes them engage with the photo shoot. They think about what they're doing. They're not just standing there. They have something to focus on and they have something to do. I know, this might look a little bit uncomfortable. Like I'm not trying to push, some, let's say, older folks who are like, I don't know, a little bit older and they overweight and all this stuff to do something like this to that extent.
Exactly.
But, the moderation of this type of posing, I'm pushing on all my headshots, right?
Okay.
And it works because, they more engaged, they think about a photo shoot, they focus on you, they also pay attention to you, what you're telling to them. Because if you tell someone, hey, stand over there, I'm going to take photos, they're going to be like, okay, like what should I do? Like, how should I stand? How should I turn my body? This pose tells them exactly how to do things, right? And they have to focus on it and they have to think about what they're doing. And the funny thing is, and I hear this all the time, I know it might sound kind of crazy, but my clients are tired after the headshot session. Like they have to work for it. It's not like, they're going to show up, they're going to stand, I'm going to snap some pictures and that's it. I make them work a little bit just to kind of push certain lines on their body, create some specific body language and all this stuff. We could go really deep on this, but that's just the basic premise of why I'm doing the way I'm doing this, and it works. I've been doing this for a decade now, and it makes me feel that people are way more engaged throughout a photo shoot, and they really kind of pay attention to to you, to the camera, to whatever is happening around them. And this is another thing what I want to point it out is one of the worst thing what I found when it comes to the headshot session is when your client basically their mind goes away and they start thinking about some other crap, right? About their life, about their job problems, about whatever the hell is going on in their life. So one of the things which I'm always really what I'm trying to push is just to kind of keep their attention on the photo shoot. And, if you are able to do that, then you're going to be way more successful with the images, because you're going to see that attention, or you're going to see that people are engaged with you. Human body, well, human face, I don't know, I have over 200 type of different muscles on their face, and you can see if someone is looking at the camera and their mind is someone else. You feel it. Like, you look at the image, like, okay, they're not there. Like, they're looking at you, but their mind. But if you see at my images, and this is one of the kind of key points what I'm trying, that they look at you and you feel like they really pay attention to you, right? So that's why what I'm trying to do is to create not only the connection with my subject, but also make them think about a photo shoot, because that creates completely different face expressions.
Right. So it's engagement. At the very end, it comes down to engagement. Let's talk about lighting. I have seen or recognized that your lighting is always similar, and almost every time it's tied to on location work, or the studio doesn't really matter. It's kind of the basic setup, which is kind of a standard setup, but still it's elaborated. It seems to be a 3-light setup. We will see in a second. And of course, for us as a photographer, lighting is kind of the tool that we get what we want in a way of the result and the style or signature style. But lighting, obviously, in this way, because we were talking about, is also about that we don't disturb the client, because we want to be engaged with the client, right? Because the client really does not care too much about the lighting. If we see this setup, you told me this is actually for a client, so that's not a model. So this is a client setup. And we see here the kind of your to-go-to lighting, right?
Yes.
Which is a three lights,
yes.
It's 3 lights, right? Plus a reflector. Okay. Quickly, really briefly explain what we see here, so we can then have an idea what we will see on the next pictures.
Sure. So again, before we jump into this, I'm going to give a little bit of disclaimer just to make sure everyone is on the same page.
Right.
I don't want to say, and I know it's going to sound a little bit crazy, but lighting is just the foundation of where you're going with the image. It gives you this first layer of what you're trying to achieve, right?
Right.
So saying that the lighting kind of creates all this stuff, it's my opinion, it's nonsense. It's just a part of the equation which we have to go through to get the final results, and I'll explain this in steps. Okay, so let's go back to the lighting, and we're going to try to kind of explore this a little bit more. So the way I like to work is I'm using 3-light setup, because that gives me the full control of their entire image. So it's the main light, which just kind of gives you the first kind of like, beautiful lighting of the person. You're trying to separate your subject from the background somehow. That's why I'm using the kicker light. And then to control the background, I'm using additional light for the background. So then I have full control of the lighting, and on the top of that, just to kind of create a little bit more softer shadows on the person, on their subject face, I'm using the reflector, which just kind of bounce off the light from the main light to just fill up some of those harsher shadows on the person's face. And that's pretty much my setup. Having said that, there's one little thing what I want to add to this. When it comes to the headshots, every person have different face features, right? You have people who have, let's say, a little bit more chubby faces. There's some people who have, I don't know, bigger noses. We could go on and on. Everyone is different, right? Everyone has a different feature, and we have to somehow look at those person and try to find the best lighting for them, right? So just because you see the lighting, it's just a one thing, but I work with my lighting. What that means that you move your light all over the place. You adjust the lighting, you go higher, you go lower, you moving away, you get closer, you lift the let's say the reflector higher, you work with, let's say, your kicker light. You're trying to constantly try to find the perfect lighting for your subject. And that also takes time throughout a photo shoot. So usually what happens whenever I start shooting, the first 20 minutes, I'm trying to find what is best for the subject. And I never know, like it's not like a one recipe that would say like, oh, if you put your light 1.5 meter away, 45 degrees downwards on your subject, you always get the results. It's a BS, right? You have to find it the best angle. Sometimes, lighting works, this kind of the same setup works for one person. It's not going to work at all for the other person. Another little example, what I want to share is that also depends on which side of the lighting you have. If you're shooting Rembrandt lighting, you can have your main light on the right, on the left-hand side, right? Either or. And I remember it's like a little life kind of experience, which just taught me so much. I'm shooting this person. I have light on the right, like main light on the right-hand side. I'm just keep shooting, changing the posing, changing, the body language, trying to do everything. And the things just don't work. And I'm just like, what the hell is happening here? Like, I just don't understand why I'm getting stuff, and you see it and it just doesn't add up. And you know what? I was just like, okay, you know what? Why don't I switch the light? And what I've done, I put my main light on the left-hand side, and then I just switch the kicker light. And all of a sudden, all the images are just like, holy shit, it's working now. So every person also have different sides of the face, right? So they say that the closer the right to the left is that's apparently the most beautiful people are,
Right.
but everyone has own side, right? So going back to the lighting, it's just it's you have to learn how to work with it. Yes,
No, absolutely. And we could do a 10-hour talk about lighting.
absolutely.
So now let's go to the next frame, which is about emphasizing the similarities of your 3-point lighting, right?
The lighting is a one thing, but then also you have the retouching process, which also fix some of those deficiencies of what you're not able to get with the lighting, right? So that's what you see on those final images. I would say it's not really 100% of, I would say, what the lighting does to your subject. There's things which are altered, there are things which are fixed, there's some shadows which are softened, there is some face and skin discolorations removed from the skin. And that's why the light is not only the light itself, but also the light is polished afterwards in post-production. So I want to make this clear that the stuff what you're seeing, it's not exactly what the light did to your subject or to this particular image. And I want to make this clear because I always hear this like, oh my God, your lighting is so perfect. But again, it's a process. The lighting is the first step, then is the editing process, which kind of all those deficiencies from lighting, they're fixed, right? So I think what we could do another time, or we could do I don't know, maybe another presentation and focus only on this, where we could show what the lighting done to the subject, how the raw image look like, and what's happening when it's polished. And people could really see the big picture and could see the whole process. But going back to what you were asking about the lighting, yes, the lighting when it comes to shooting headshots, I really like, there's two types of lighting what I use. One is the Rembrandt lighting, which I really like because adds the dimension to the image. And there is more flat lighting, which is the clamshell lighting. And there's two setups. And you know what? Basically, my lighting for my subject, it's pretty much all the time the same because I know what the look I'm going after. The one thing which kind of changes constantly and what we make this images different and unique, and it's the background. So we talk a little bit about some of those stories, but with the background, then you can it's the ocean, right? Because you can do endless things. You can use any location, you can use any background, and you can really add a little bit of flavor to your image. And that's when kind of the creative part kind of comes into place.
And that's exactly why I wanted to show this similar lighting situations. And thank you for the note about the post-processing. Obviously, looking at the behind the scenes pictures in relation to all the different locations we have seen now today, which is it all about, which is your distinctive look, which mixes then with the background. And that's a big differentiator to other photographers. That's the whole story about the backgrounds.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, the whole message, which I would like to share with photographers, don't feel limited, that there is no places where you can shoot, there is no
Right.
interesting background, there is you have to have a studio to get interesting images. It's not true, and I'm trying to be kind of the proof of that, right? That can
You are.
really you can really make work, things that you probably wouldn't expect before. And again, it's a learning process. It takes time to figure things out, but the more you challenge yourself, and then you try to make things work, they will start working eventually. I can guarantee you that.
Right. So as a concluding question, about this detour about locations, what was the most extreme or unusual location you have ever shot for a commissioned client headshot? So not your private work.
Extreme location.
Well, unusual. We have
Unusual.
seen the bridges. We have been outdoor today. We have been on these environmental portraits all over. We have been on the swimming deck, etc. Is there something missing here?
There's something missing. Well, it's hard to pick one because I think all those
Please
locations
pick one
were pick one. So
for you.
I'll share that with story,
Okay.
which is kind of interesting, but also gives people a little bit more, I would say, also different perspective, that also you have to be very careful when you're choosing the location.
Right.
So I had this paid client, and he was an architect, and he really wanted to have some image which could kind of have some kind of like architecture on the background. So I started kind of driving around at downtown in Calgary, because they have a lot of interesting buildings and places and kind of structures which we could use as a background. So stupid me, I didn't kind of like look deeper into how that works, shooting in places, kind of public places, or places where they have buildings behind, whatever. So we got to the location, I set up my stuff, we started shooting, and all of a sudden there's like 4 different cop cars pulled over, and they start kind of screaming and yelling at us that we don't have a permit, and they're gonna find us. I have 2 seconds to pack the stuff. And we started like, oh, I got terrified, because like they were really furious, and I'm like, holy shit, like what now? And you have this paid client, he's established architect, and that we hold all these cops around yelling at us that we aren't allowed to shoot. And apparently what happened, which is also kind of interesting, I had no idea about it, that first of all, you have to have a permit to shoot on some kind of places, and you have to have from the city, you have to have this whole paperwork done, not to mention you have to pay tons of money to get that. Plus you have to have a permit of the building itself, because they also have some rights to protect their kind of property, whatever. Also, what was fascinating, this whole thing happened after, kind of September 11th. So whenever they will see you taking photos of their buildings, they allow to pretty much just arrest you, which also is, I think, crazy thing these days. But the whole story ended up like, they let us go. We packed their stuff. The funny thing, I got the shots, so we worked fairly quickly, and I was able to pull off some stuff out of this. But the whole situation with the police was a little bit terrifying. The client was scared, and I felt like extremely embarrassed, because I should be prepared for something like this, and I should know better. But I was, again, learning curve. Don't go to some locations which you're not sure about, and then if you go there, make sure you're fully prepared, kind of from the permit side, and then you cover that if someone shows up and starts screaming and yelling at you, you're covered, right? So I hope that's something interesting.
Yeah.
But that was one of those stories which
That's super interesting. So the unusual location was actually, again, an unusual situation, right? So we
yes
discovered a lot through the presentation. Well,
yes
yeah, that's kind of concluding it. That's absolutely perfect.
I hope that was interesting, and give people some insight to my world and my work, and they can connect
Absolutely.
some dots for sure.
Absolutely. Now, one last thing. I just want to change back to the presentation, please. And here we are. One last thing, last but not least. And the topic for another time is you are also shooting a lot of what you call creative headshots. So this really closes for me actually the circle about creativity from the quote we were citing in the very beginning. But I said, this is a talk for another time, but this beautifully plays into these private stories, what we have had today. So I really thank you very much for joining today and for all the insights. That's what we don't see on the final results, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. That was really, interesting conversation. I was super excited for it, and I'm glad, we could open up some interesting new doors and then, explore some of those things. So yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time and see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Bye bye, folks.
Bye.